Hi, this video will be first in the series about custom landscape material. Because there are a lot of information to digest, I split everything into smaller parts. In this video, I will explain what type of textures we need, and we will create first layer, which then in the next video we will duplicate and blend together. So let's begin. I will use this template, I think it's Mountain Ridge called. So because there is already these mountains and some smaller hills, so it's really nice for our material prototyping and testing. Okay, so what we need to start with is the textures. It's super important. So because of the landscape only can have one material, it's super important to understand that there are limitations per platform. And limitation is based how many texture samples we can have. Not textures, but like texture samples. So for example, if we have three textures, like normally we do, so we have albedo, which is color, then we have ORM, so it's basically ambient occlusion, roughness, metallic, and then we have normal map. So this will already be three texture samples, okay? And now, for example, if we, let's say, have like 10 layers in our landscape material, so multiply it by 3, so we have 30 texture samples. That's crazy. And for example, mobile devices, I think maximum they can support only 12 texture samples or 10, I think 12. And I think DirectX 11 is something like 16. And then DirectX 12, it's more. So what will happen if your platform is not supporting so many texture samples? It won't crash your game. It will be there, but you will basically will have this on your landscape. You will have this default texture looking. So it's a default material with a checker pattern. So if you don't care, for example, about mobile devices, then it's fine. Yeah, so you shouldn't be worrying about it. Again, it shouldn't crash game. It will just look bad. But how we can simplify if we want to have more layers and we want all these like layers with the texture samples and on the mobile devices and on DirectX 12, for example, and 11. So what we're doing, we can pack in different textures even more stuff. So I won't go complex, for example, that we can pack even in a normal map, but we're not going that way. But what we can do, we can pack height map, which we're using to blend layers nicely together. Because of the height map, we can have this kind of blending, right? For example, these small rocks, they are from different this layer. And rock, of course, is different, and then we have grass. So they're blending really nicely because of the height information. And sometimes we have it in this packed mask because there are already masks. So we just, instead of 3 channels, we're using 4 channels. But in this case, it's really useful to have it in albedo because albedo we're always using. And let's say on a mobile device, not so much will happen if we're not using this because like, yes, it won't look like perfect because it contains like important mask like roughness. But it's still better than, for example, missing color, right? Because without color, it would be like really bad. So then it means this one, it definitely should be in our layer. So we can get rid of that and we can get rid of normal map. Again, without normal map, it won't look perfect, but still we will have the color. So if I will open this texture, so you can see that in alpha, this is how height map is looking. Some will look better, some will look worse. So you can always do some packing better, maybe in Photoshop. For example, I can look into, there is landscape textures from Fortnite. So as you can see, they doing same thing and they're like really nice quality here. And I repeated many times, it's basically simple. So black, it goes lower, white, it goes up. So for example, when we will start blending, areas like black will appear later after these white layers. So white layers will always come first, and they represent that it's higher than black. So is that, and if we will look at like even grass, for example, this is Fortnite grass. Look, Really nice, sharp quality. So then what it means that we can get rid of 2 samples per layer and have 1 layer and 1 sample. So it means if we have now 10 layers and with the 3 samples, we had 30 samples, right, for the 10 layers. Now, let's say on the mobile devices, we can optimize that and make only 10 samples. So it means we still can have 10 layers. They won't be so looking perfect as on DirectX 12, but they still will be there. Okay, so about packing. You can do packing in Photoshop. It's basically just copying height map and pasting into alpha. But because I'm using here Megascan, Quixel Megascan textures, so I will show how you can do it there. Of course, it's soon we won't probably have this bridge. So this is our bridge, because now everything is moving to fab. So I don't know how it will work in a fab, of course, and if packing will be working. But now actually in this bridge, we can pack our textures as we like. And it's kind of cool. So they had and still have a plugin for Unreal, for example, and other applications. So you could tell what textures pack in what channels and then export directly to that. But of course, they don't have for UEFN, just only Unreal. So what we can do is, of course, like you need to log in with your Epic account. And then in the surface textures, let's find something. Let's say like gravel. Okay. Like this is pretty cool. When you're selecting it, so there is no reason to go higher because UEFN supports only 2K. And it means you will just need to download higher resolution for no reason. So for the download settings, you can set what type of texture you want, or format, I mean. So there's not much like types in here. So you have EXR and JPEG. JPEG could be fine if you're not planning to do any modifications later, let's say in the Photoshop. If you do, better of course have EXR. So its only size will be bigger, but again, when you will pack it for the game, it won't matter. So this is basically for what textures you want to download. And then super important in here on export settings. So as you can see here, you can install plugin, but it's pretty old because 5 version in Unreal works differently, but you don't need that at all. But in the textures, you can choose what format you want. Okay. And this is, for example, for 3D models, when you downloading 3D models and with, of course, textures. So this is for all of that. But what we need is just only for surfaces. So it means it will be only textures. So in here, first of all, albedo. And as you can see, like format, it's TGA, right? But you can set, for example, PNG if you want. It's totally fine. I just noticed that TGA, it works kind of better with alpha information. So when I'm using alpha, I prefer TGA. But yeah, you can choose whatever you want. So most importantly in here, instead of RGB, and definitely not grayscale, you want RGBA, right? Because you want 4 channels. I don't remember if by default it said RGB only 3 channels. But as you can see, here you can choose what you want. So for example, in here, you can choose what texture, which we're already downloading, you can add to this channel. So it's already doing this packing. But because it's a color, like it's albedo, we need RGB channels. So you just leave it as is. But into alpha, so this is our height map. In here, it's called displacement map, but it's the same height map information. So you can just find it here, displacement, and it's linear. Yeah, so it's not as RGB, it's linear. And the rest is like that, and it's 8-bit. So this is for color. Then same, so emissive, it's emissive if you have emissive. But then, for example, I created this ORM, right? So this again, our ambient occlusion roughness metallic. To create custom, you just click on this plus, and then you can choose, again, whatever you want, right? So as you can see, I choose like RGB, but then in all these channels, instead of sRGB, it's set to linear because this is mask information. So this is grayscale. it's not any color information there. So then we have ambient occlusion, roughness, metallic. That's it. So when this is done, so for example, let's download this. Okay, so as you can see, it's downloaded. And then you're clicking on this export. And of course, it won't export, it will show error. Yeah, because even my plugin is for 4.27 version, it's very, very old. So of course, it can export, but it's actually packed. So now you can right click on this thumbnail and go to file, and it will open this folder with this downloaded material into your downloaded Megascans folder, where you will set your library to be. And all this, it will be what you're downloading, but then look, we have packed textures in our folder. And this is, as you can see, ORM and our albedo with displacement. There is no normal map because we're not packing normal map. So normal map, it's, as you can see, there is normal map EXR and the targa. So you can choose whatever. So I will choose this. And that's it. So as we have that, I can come here, for example, let's grab our folder. So we're dropping this normal map, okay, and then this pack textures. And we have it. So now let's open our albedo. Sometimes, as you can see in here, so I didn't even see that it's not perfect square, so it's rectangled. That sometimes can work because it's still power of 2. So it all depends on basically how you will do it. But you may notice that it's pretty dark. Because we're adding that displacement as a linear, it actually affects all 3 RS channels, RGB. So in here, you can leave everything as is, but in sRGB, just disable that. And now we're getting back our normal color. So it will look fine, and everything else, it's totally fine. So for example, we can put it on a full resolution. So we have 2048 by 1028, 1024. We have our mip maps. We're streaming. So basically everything is default. Only disable this sRGB. Then in the mask, yeah, so this is our masks. So ambient occlusion, roughness, and of course for this one we don't have any metallic information, so it's black. Because they are masks, again, we're not using colors, and best thing to do even here, instead of compression to default, we can set it to masks. So then straight away we're telling engine this is a packed mask in different channels. And as you can see, it then disables sRGB automatically. Done in here as well. Okay, 0. So I won't use these textures. I'm just showing how to pack basically and bring from bridge. So while bridge is still there, and maybe it will, so I'm not sure what will happen when everything will start working with hub. But yeah, as you saw, super simple to do. And in here as well, so everything is detected. So your normal map is always should be in compression settings as a normal. If it's not, then basically set it to normal. So always keep in mind. And sometimes when you bringing this mask, sometimes because of this color tone, engine may think that this is normal map and it says compression to normal map. If you will see weirdness in your material, just basically open your mask and see if it's not set to normal map, because sometimes it does. And same time, sometimes for the normal map, it's not setting that to normal map. And yeah, so that's it. So that, for example, it would be how to bring all these textures in here super fast, and you don't even need Photoshop, as you saw, so everything is done in a bridge. Super simple. So it's exactly what I did with all these layers. So I have forest ground, I have grass, I have rock for cliffs, then I have rocky ground, snow, and the stone floor. So all these layers we'll be implementing over the series of these videos. Okay, so let's now start with layer. So I will create material so we can preview this layer at the end of the video. I will call landscape. Actually, wrong place. Let's put it in material. in here. And we can create material instance right away. So we don't need it for now. What we need is create our first layer, and layer will be in material function. You can expose it to library, so it means when you will search, it will show up here. But because it's just only for this custom landscape material, I'm not exposing it, so I don't want it to always be there. Okay, so in each layer, we will have pretty much same information, except last one, which is our rocks, and we'll go for cliffs, for example. So there will be like a little bit difference between with rest these layers. But because rest of the layers will be pretty much same, what we will do, we will create first layer, and then I will show how you can duplicate and rename everything just in a seconds. Super simple, but like high key way. But yeah, let's start with most important stuff. So we need our textures. So let's grab, actually, what I like to do when I'm creating layers, I don't want to input already some textures, because what if later I want to move this landscape material, for example, to another project, then it will bring together all dependencies. And if I will now input, let's say, grass, and in my next project, I don't want a grass, it will still require that grass to be moved, otherwise you will break your material. So what I'm recommending to do always, so you always need to have here input, otherwise your material will error on you as well. But if you will search for default, there is always different types of the default textures. For example, you have default mask, you have default color, you have default normal map, and they're actually really tiny textures, and they without any information, they are flat color. So for example, with this one, you see it's a color. Let's copy that. Now, if we select this one as default, you see sample type, it's a masks. Because of the different texture types, you need a different texture sample as well. And copy again, default, normal map. See, now it's normal. And what means default? It's basically they're part of the engine. So when you will migrate this, you don't need to migrate these samples, because they will be part of engine anyways. So for this one, before converting to parameter, I want to convert it to the texture object first. Different between texture sample and texture object. Texture object, it's basically your original texture. As you can see, there is only one output. So to do anything with your texture, you need to sample it. So your GPU samples, and then you do all the stuff with your pixels, okay? But this one, your GPU still don't know what's in there until it's sampled. So for example, if you have texture object, then you need input it into texture sample like that, and then you can do whatever you want. And because I will do other stuff with this, so sampling will be later. So we need texture objects, and then convert it into parameter. So as you can see, a parameter texture object, so it's not texture sample. And for each layer, I will name it with what layer it is. And I'm not, for example, naming, let's say it's a grass layer or is it rock layer, because whoever will later work, I don't tell them, oh, this layer should be grass only, or this one, it should be that. I'm just naming layer 1. And if they want, for example, mud in layer 1 instead of grass, fine, they can do this. So layer 1, albedo. So sometimes you can hear that there is albedo, base color, diffuse. It's pretty much same thing. It's basically color map. So we have this one, then same thing with this texture object, convert to parameter. And again, layer 1. And so it's really nice to call it what masks are inside. So then people basically will know, oh yeah, I know what's inside, instead of just then they must open texture and look. Sometimes it's not even like it's easy to sell. Texture object, parameter. Can even collapse them. That. So in the root node, it's not important, right? How it's called. Is it packed mask or, for example, ORM? because we're dealing with that. It's basically inside of the material is more important. Put normal map after. I like to have in my parameters then in material instance as well. Okay, so this will be our textures. Okay, let's now do mapping. So our tiling of the textures. So as well, will be parameters, layer 1. Yeah, I don't need UV telling you. Sometimes I'm calling it UV tiling when I'm using triplanar. So then triplanar is triplanar and then UVs is UVs, but we will have only UVs in this layer. So I'm not even telling, I'm just like tiling, and this one will be near. So what we will do is we'll have different tiling based on the distance. So close to the player camera, it will be near tiling, this one. And then second one will be for the far. So for the near, let's say this 0.1, 0.5, and then this 0.1. And again, railroad outputs. Now, parameters for this distance blending. This is start. Transition. So basically, this will control smooth transition. So instead of really sharp between near and far, we will control how smoothly and slowly it will transition. Okay. And last one, it will be our Boolean. And in some cases, sometimes it's you can do just different tiling on a distance, or you can even just swap for the color. With a color, it's easier because, again, when we're doing near and far tiling, we're actually doing extra sample, because instead of just applying same tiling on the one sample, we need two samples now. And it again comes to limitations on the different platforms. And sometimes, especially on the mobile, you can just set like, yeah, color is fine. So for example, if you have grass, maybe in a distance, just similar green color as your texture, and people won't see it, especially if it will be covered by some trees, bushes, and grass mesh. So let's look for the Boolean parameter and use distance color. So by default, I will switch it off. Okay, looks good. Now, what we can do, we can split our packed map. So we need to split it into our masks. And, or actually, what we need to do is we actually will create another material function to control this distant blend and tiling. So let's do this. Near and far tiling. This one we can expose if you want. So we need texture sample, texture sample. So as I said, we need two texture samples, and we will be lerping between them. And because we will use height map in our albedo, so we need 4 channels RGBA, not this RGB. Let's have our input function. And in here, instead of vector free, so vector free is after already sampling, but what we need is this texture 2D. So texture 2D, and yeah, we can set it to use by default if you want, or actually no, let's remove. So basically, if you're not setting this use default, so this one preview, when you will connect your material function inside of your material and you want input in here something, it will start erroring. So basically will throw error on you. And it's actually important for us because if we're not inputting any texture, why we even need to do or hold this thing, right? So if we're using this material function, means we need texture. So that's why it's a good sometimes when we error, because maybe someone will forget to input texture and it will show error and then, oh, okay, I need to input that. We're not enabling that by default. but we still need to input this texture object, something default. And now we can connect into texture inputs like that. So as you can see now, this white appeared here as well because we're inputting it. Okay, so that's done. And now let's do tiling because it's a landscape. So instead texture coordinates, we will use landscape coordinates. And same we do multiply. And yeah, we can do as well function input. And in here we can use default number and we can set what we had in here. You see we have near 0.5 and far 0.1. So let's change from vector3 into scalar. So it means it's only one input, so it's simple float. So then you don't need to input here, just into first box. So this is our near. Yeah, it will be near, so it will be 0.5, like that. And we can copy that because it's pretty much same. It's just a different value. Tiling far. Okay. And now we need mask for blending. You can use, yeah, distance blend like this. I like camera depth fade. I don't know why, but gave me better results. I will use this. And let's do inputs. So we need only two inputs here. And this is scalar and scalar. So both scalar. So our start, it's actually this offset. And our transition, it will be our length. So it's opposite what we had there in opposite order. So let's have blend transition, blend start. And by default, maybe I will set like 3000, 3000. Then anyways, we will, in material instance, we will adjust that. Okay. And now let's call it distance. So we have that. Now we can control. So for our alpha, yeah, so we have two samples, but now we have our mask. So distance blend, simple as that. Then if we want to have color, yeah, we'll input color later. So let's use that. And because this is 4 channels RGBA, so instead of for the color, just have a vector3, we need vector4. And in here will be our distance blend. So in B will go our color. So let's name it distance color. Because it's a color, so I will set everything to white. So it means it will be white for everything to 1. And then in here will go our RGBA like that. And we will use static switch. Static switch, but not parameter, like that. Then if we will use color, so it will be true. And if we're not using color, so it will be false, like that. So in here, we need another function input, distance color, and set here into static boolean. Don't set to boolean. Yeah, it should be static boolean, like that. And I will keep it use preview value as default. And in here, we will just add static boolean. Again, not parameter, it's just static boolean. And we'll set it to false. So by default, we're not using color, but then you can enable them later if you want it. Okay, so that's done. Now, let's rename this one. So this will be our main one, RGBA, and we will output few actually. Then mask it and use just 3 channels. because maybe we will use that, and probably we will. And let's copy that, and so this is only RGB, and I want this one be on the top, so this will be 0, this will be 1, and this one will be actually our alpha, because we will use that as a height map. And for the normal map, I need another this output. So this will be our just A. So in here, we need only alpha. So with a color would be cool, but we know that if we're controlling tiling in here, right, why not then control tiling for the normal map as well? So we can do this like that. Oh, actually, I forgot to add tiling. So this is our tiling near, and this is our tiling far. That's why we need 2 samples, you see. So for this one, it as well will be tiling near, and we will use this input texture object, and actually we need to name this one as well, texture object. Actually, let's see, maybe it won't show any error. There you see, like, so this still will make it work in material, but kind of like just shows error, so you may think that, oh yeah, something may be broken. And as you can see now, it's fine. But because our normal map is not connected to output, when we will connect, we will get another error. But we'll fix that. Okay, so we have that. Now for the far, we're not using normal map because player won't see so far anyways, and we don't want to waste another texture sample on just far away region. So basically what we'll do, we'll just like use only texture in here on the near, but for the far, we will use just blue color. So you can't set it to 0. It must be blue color. So it's 0, 0, and then 1 in a blue channel, or your material will break because normal map needs that information. So now we can use lerp. So this is RGB. So it goes here. Then this is here, and it's our dissemblance. And let's grab output. 0, 1, 2. This is free. Normal. Okay, let's see. It's actually, there are no errors without this one. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Now let's organize our inputs, because if we'll drop like that, so you see like it will be a little bit messy, and actually there are 2 I missed to name. Let's see. Yeah, so this is our scaling. So tiling near and tiling far, and that transition, that's fine. Okay, so what we want first is probably inputs. So let's set this one to 0. Yeah, then we have our normal map. So this one will be 1. Then let's do tiling. This will be 2. And then 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. Save, and let's look. Okay, so we have texture, normal, near, far, blendings, enable, disable color. Yeah, perfect. So we have everything organized nicely. Okay, so we can close this. Okay, we can start with our, again, packed map. So how it works, because packed map is actually RGB as well, same like albedo. And then where we will do albedo, so albedo will be in a different place. So we will do normal map together, but, and actually, let me see, I think that should be fine. Let's see. Yeah, if we're not inputting normal map, it shouldn't basically get any information and do any processing. So we will, yeah, we'll do with our packed map. Then we do tiling here, R. Then do we need this blending in here? Yeah, let's add it. Start, position. And for this one, we don't need color. So we don't need basically do anything in here because that one, it's mainly for albedo. And now this will be our RGBA. Call it map edited. So it still will be packed when it's still on packet, right? But it will have already proper tiling and blending. And why we, for example, because as I said, we're using ambient occlusion, roughness, and metallic. So it's 3 channels. Why we exporting RGBA? Because sometimes people using 4 actually channels, and maybe not even 4 channels, but maybe you have in a different channels, different stuff. So I want to give option. You can use 4 channels, you can use 3 channels, right? So it's more because sometimes, for example, people using red channel for ambient occlusion, sometimes they're using that for specular map. So it's up for someone. So it's more versatile than that way. Okay, so now actually let's split it. So let's grab our packed edited and then let's mask it on and mask. So this one, it will be our specular. I will set it to red and I will convert it to parameter. So then, for example, maybe someone will have a specular in alpha channel or maybe in the blue channel. So then they can just specify that. So layer 1, specular. So as you can see here, it's like tick boxes. So they will be exposed in the material instance. Okay, now I want static switch parameter and I will name it again layer 1. So it's always layer number and then use specular. So we need that information. And sometimes, again, if someone don't have that map, they can just add value to that. So it's really nice to have still. And if you sometimes saw issue that, especially on the landscape, it looks plasticky, and this is because of the like default specular. So sometimes you may hear that people saying like, "Oh, never touch specular; it's not PBR," and it's actually is because specular value it's still on different surfaces is different, and in the engine it's set 0.5 by default, just to like be in the middle of everything, right? But it doesn't mean that 0.5 it's always same value on different surfaces. So for example, if you will apply 0.5 specular on a grass, it will look like a plasticky and basically how light reflects from that. And you need like on the grass almost on a 0 or like really tiny number, so like 0.05, then it will look nicer, right? But if you have specular map, it's even better. But if not, then basically you will have your parameter to control that. So layer 1, specular intensity. And as I said, I will set it to small number like that, and output reroute named. Because later we will need to combine everything to the export. And we actually can copy paste this and actually not that, but this. We don't need this. And let's 1, 2, 3. So we have 4 channels. So this one is done. Okay, so let's just rename this one. Now this one is roughness. And last one metallic. Now let's just set different channels. So ambient occlusion, it still will be red. And let's enable map, using map by default. So most often for the landscape materials, we have map for ambient occlusion. Same for the roughness. So roughness, it will be green channel, and we will enable that. And now metallic, we're not using map by default, because by default, even if we're using map, it will be basically black. So we don't need that. We can just use value, and actually we need change values as well. So, and here will be blue. So basically, if even we will use map, so it will be blue by default, but then again, we can change. So let's set it to 0, roughness to, so by default, let's set it to 0.5, ambient occlusion 1 by default, and this one 0.05. Okay, yeah, that looks good. Now let's have our colors. So we will blend a little bit our texture. So not blend by default. So by default it will be white, but if we want, we can always do it. So this will be our layer 1, just maybe tint color, and by default it should be white. If it's white, it's not affecting, even if you enabling or disabling. So basically it's not affecting, right? Okay, and now for the distance. So we have color, and this is for the distance if we will want to use. So layer 1, distance color as well. Let's say white by default. But in here, because we're blending with RGBA map, we need 4 channels. And I don't know why it's not working. So as you can see here, when we're converting to parameter, well, our color was RGB. Now it's converted. So in here, you can see parameter 1111. So it's 4. So it's vector 4. And we have all that. But if you will export it like this, it will actually will be 3 channels. So it will be vector 3, and you will get error when you will blend with that texture, with which is RGBA. So what we need to do, we need to separately combine all this. So let's do make float 4 and just connect it like that. Okay. And this will be intensity for our normal map. By default, I set 1, 1. Okay, let's keep it like that. I won't frame it. I need to add another one, but I want to show first. Yeah, let's do now our color. So in here we need our albedo, then we need our normal map, then tiling near, then tiling far, then start, transition, then use our distance color and distance color. So organize a little bit. Okay, so now for normal map strength. Yeah, it's a simple stuff, but I will create material function because I use a lot of that, and I'm always saying, if you're using same thing again and again and again, just create material function. So it will be material function, normal strength. Let's open that. So we need input. So this is our texture, and this will be our already sample. So yeah, it will be vector 3. Okay, so let's call it normal. Then we need layer. Let's see, yeah, this one goes into B. Into A goes just blue color. And in here, we will add a scalar parameter. So this will be normal strength. Let's set maybe by default 1, like that. And here, scalar. And we're done. It's like simple like that, but you would be always like repeating this, this thing. So why not just like create material function that we can expose to library, because this thing can work not just with landscape material, but with any material. So output, and here will be our, we can actually call it, just leave it on the result. So now dropping here, normal, we don't need an even parameter because we already have that. So normal strength. So nice and clean. And let's call it normal final. Okay. So now let's have multiply, then RGB, because now we have alpha for our height map and then RGB colors separate. Now we can multiply with our tint. Yeah. So that's why like it's white. So we're not even putting switch. We're not like enabling, disabling that because it's not doing anything if it's white. Okay, so is that. And now we will build material. So we're not exposing this, yeah, like that, while we in material function, because we want whole this layer to be material. So let's search for material, and it should be make, yeah, there's make material. Actually, we don't need make material. We can do set material. So in make material, as you can see, it exposes all parameters, all these inputs, and then it outputs full material. But we don't need a lot of that, right? So in a set material, you can input already existing material, and then you can expose some channels which you can change, then output some material. But thing is, like, we don't even need to input material. We can just input this stuff, but we can input just what we need. So less nodes basically. So first one, base color, then let's have it normal map. Where are you? Normal map. Then let's have, yeah, specular, roughness, then maybe metallic. Order, it's actually doesn't matter. It's basically for you only. Metallic, we don't have emissive in here, so it will final one. Where is ambient occlusion? Here. Let me check again. Base color, normal, specular, roughness, metallic, ambient occlusion. Yep, that's fine. And then we can output that. And instead of result, we can name it as a material. So then in the material, main material, you will see that each layer outputs material instead of just some result. And what that result is, you don't know. Okay, so this is our base color. Then here should be our normal final. Then we have our specular, metallic, and ambient occlusion. Yeah, so when we're using this root nodes, it's everything, it looks very much more organized and simple to use. Okay, so we can already preview this because we don't have layers. So we have only one, but let's open our material and we have our layer. We can drop it here and you see we have only one output as a material. You could do all this thing like break material and you're going again into all this rubbish and you can connecting manually. You can get material, and same as I said, you can expose parameters which you want to connect. So sometimes you want one or another, or sometimes, as in this case, I can use just use material attributes. So it collapses this and I can connect it like that and I'm done. So let's save. Let's for now close this and we need to apply our material instance. Here is our material instance to our landscape. So we have it here. You need apply it to this root one, like that. And now we have our material. Of course, everything is white. Why? Because we added white default textures. So now let's open our this material instance. And as you can see, so we have default ones. But at least we don't have errors. So everything is working. So let's open that and let's go to, let's say, grass. working. When I'm working with tiling, what I like to do is to wrap our mannequin, place it there, and now we can preview. Ooh, tiling is really off, right? Because this grass is huge. So let's fix that. I didn't set distance blend inside of there, like any default, so they're on a 0, so that's why it's not working. So let's set it 3000, and where is the start? Here is our start, 3000. Oh, now you can see that now grass looks pretty good close, but far away it will be larger, so as it was here close. And we can actually just really quickly preview how it works. It's the same camera depth, so it's the same as again this distance blend. So if we connect, let's make this one again normal. So in the base color, let's just call it start quickly and offset whatever. So this will be length, this will be our start. Again, if they're on a 0, so we have that. Now we have only 2 parameters. So now start, you see, basically we have that. And it would be sharp as that, and it's based on the camera position. So it would be sharp like this, but then we have this transition. See, this basically creates this gradient. That's how it works. Super simple. So let's delete this and again enable attributes and like that. Okay. So what I want as well is let's just quickly show you before that. So this is what I was saying. We have our channels. So let's say ambient occlusion. You see now it's set to red channel. You can disable that, and you can set, for example, to green channel. As you saw, when you don't have anything selected, then it breaks. So make sure something is selected, and don't select 2. It won't break. It will work, but you're basically using 2 channels, and ambient occlusion is only 1 channel. So it means you will mix with something, and it won't work pretty well. So like that. For example, where is our specular? Specular, yeah. So we have specular, and we should have, yeah, there is specular intensity. Let me show you what I was saying about plastic look. So if that would be by default 0.5, this is how by default specularity adds. So you see all this whitey thing, and it looks like, yeah, it looks like a plastic something. Not really nice. So if you will set it to 0, it's basically not affecting color of the texture. So now it's more greenish as it should be. I like little tiny number. Besides, like, don't forget later on there will be grass on top of that. So even as we see some tiling in the future videos, we will use some mask to break this tiling even more. But again, as you can see, it's only really close and sometimes visible, sometimes not, like depends on the direction. Yeah, so some direction visible more, but again, there will be more grass. As you saw when I just swapped to our material, there were like lots of grass in here, and it wouldn't be so much visible as without, of course, grass. And grass, rocks, trees, that helps. Yeah, so we have specular intensity. Then we can use specular map, right? So if I'm switching that, so then intensity, as you can see here, it disappeared, but now it's using mask, and we have here specular channel. We can set to channel because we don't have specular map, and we're using red channel, and in red channel now we have ambient occlusion, so everything is basically means it's white. So now it's again white. So let's disable that. So that's fine. And we have normal strength. So as you can see, we can go really dense, not dense, intense. So don't go too much. I would recommend don't go like maybe more than 3. So 2 is fine. Then tiling. Yeah. So for example, for the far, Oh, it's near. Or of course, when it's really small number, yeah, so you can see that this is grass. That's not nice, but if something maybe like that, right? There is some like interesting pattern, something going on, but maybe it's not visible that it's grass. So same like in here, it's not so repetitive, right? And especially later there will be cliffs as well. So it's fine. But if you don't want to have there anything, you find with color. So let's enable color. So distance color, enable, like that. And because by default we set it to white, so you can see how it looks. Now we can grab our color and I can actually sample first. Yeah, like that. Just to get close to that color. We can fly up a little bit. And now let's adjust it even more. Try to match. Yeah, pretty good, I would say. So in stylized maps, you don't need, I think, colors. There's textures on the far. You can save basically texture samples. You can just use color. Depends. Of course, if that would be cliff, maybe you would need. But yeah, so with color, it still works fine. And you can adjust when this transition will happen. So it could happen faster or later if it's too fast for you. So let's disable that color. Okay, so last thing I want to do before finishing this video is basically I noticed that in the Fortnite material on the grass, based on the slope, there is a little tint and it looks really nice. So let's add that to our layer. So this is what I wanted to show first before adding that layer. So color, slopes, tint, color. Okay. By default, maybe let's add something like orangey. We'll see. And again, our root, albedo, slopes, tint. Okay. Now we can put everything in place. Nice and tidy. Or actually, yeah, I will add some parameters for the height map. Well, in this video, we're not blending them, but still they should be part of the layer. So this one will be controls. So we have now this one, and I will show two ways. It's almost the same, but a little bit different visual look. And then you will decide what you want. So there is no perfect. So this one we will keep as a multiply. And let's create another multiply. And again with this, our RGB. But in here will be our slopes tint. Yeah. And let's lerp between, let me think. Yeah, this one will go into A, this one into B, and we need mask for that. And let's create static switch. And it will be layer 1, enable slopes tint. We'll go into base color, and here we'll go into true. So by default, I'm not enabling, but you can enable by default. Depends what you will want. So if it's false, we don't want to do this. So we will just go from here into false. Better. Okay, and we need the mask. So for the mask, we will get vertex normals, then mask B channel, only B, and let's add and multiply. This will be layer 1, slopes, vertex offset. We'll set default one minus 0.6. Then this one, layer 1, slopes, vertex, sharpness, hardness, something. And this will be 2.5 by default. I will use 1 minus and saturate. And the root named slopes. We can use here, okay, slopes mask. And while we're here, let's set this transition blend start 3000, maybe this one 2.5. Okay, so now enable slope tints. Here we go. And as you can see, it's already doing something. Nice. So how it will look is in here, it will be our rock, but then on the edges, grass will have different tint. And of course, not red or that, but it's actually doing interesting, better than it was. My case, interesting. Yeah, maybe just multiply and it's fine. So you can just add maybe a little bit like yellow color. And then, of course, if you will go from the color into white, it means, again, multiplying by white, same like multiplying by 1, so it will be green. Or same in here, you can increase, no, you can decrease to black, so it will be like that. But yeah, it's working because when I first tested, multiply didn't give enough this tint. It was really subtle. And if increasing that tint, right, with multiply, then, for example, at night, it would make it glow because, yeah, you see, like now, it's fine. But if you would increase, let's say, intensity like that or like that, you see, so basically at night, these areas would glow like that. You don't want that. So let's set it back to 1. But now it looks totally fine, to my surprise. Because what I wanted to show, and let's compare. So, well, we have that. So instead of multiply, what we could do, there are different types of blending, as you can see here. Not so many as in Photoshop, for example, but enough. And we could look into overlay. So then base would be our RGB, and then tint would be our blend, and it will go into B. And let's look when we're saving. Yeah, so it's looked brighter now. It's actually opposite what I had. I had with blend darker, and with multiply it was really subtle, and I couldn't again increase with multiply, but now it's working totally fine. So as you can see with this blend overlay, it works as well, fine. It's what you would basically prefer more. Just keep in mind, blend overlay, it adds a little bit more instructions. You see here we have instructions per shader and vertex. So we have pixel shader and vertex shader. And overlay, I don't remember how many, but like maybe we'll add 5 or something extra instructions in here. Let's maybe swap it back to material, to multiply and see. I think multiply works fine. And then we can control that. Again, intensity, we can, you see, we can reduce. So don't worry that it's really dark. It's more important that it gives enough color. So then we can lower that like that, for example. Very cool. So we're basically adding this variation. It's really nice. Okay, so that's done. Let's quickly let's remove this overlay. And let's do maybe like that and like this. So we're finished with all of that. What we need only is expose our height, because then we need to blend it with other layers. It's actually will be here. So let's move this one up a little bit. Okay, so let's quickly create our parameters. So we need few of them. So this one, layer 1, height, intensity. So will be 1 by default. This one, contrast. And by default, let's set it to 3. Then layer 1, and this will be, so basically we need two parameters, low and high. I will show just in a second why. So high, low, and high. So this one 0, and this one will be 0.3. Nice and clean. Okay, so now let's do this stuff in here. So we need, before basically exporting height, we want to tweak it a little bit. So multiplying with intensity is our height intensity. Then we need power. We will use that for the contrast. And then we need remap, volume range. And we need in here low. So basically our height low. And in here our height high. We're basically remapping here from these values on input into 0 and 1. And let's grab output. So we have how many outputs? So far, only one, I think. Yep, we have only one output. So this will be second one, and this will be our height. So this will be used to blend between our layers. Final thing, what I just want to do is, if you look here, it's quite messy because we not categorized these parameters. So this is what we want, especially before duplicating, because in the next video, I will show how in seconds you can duplicate and rename all of that. So rename not just this layer 1 into layer 2, for example, layer 3, but as well and group. And that's why it's important to now group everything in layer 1. Otherwise, you will need to redo it. Okay, so I will name it. So I pause, I will name, and then I will show final result. So this is how it now looks. So as you can see, I grouped them like that. And actually, if you don't know how to do it, let's create just parameter, any parameter. So you see here group and it says none. And if you click, there is none. But you actually can select that and you can name it as you like. So what I did is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then space, layer 1, space, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and enter. And then this is index, right? So it starts from 0 and then 1, 2, 3. And now, because I created it like that, if I will create another parameter, now it in a drop down, there will be now this layer. So this is how I created. And then with priority, I organize them. So simple as that. So that's it for the video. So we created super important layer. And then in the next video, we will duplicate that. We will rename that, because if parameters not renamed, they will overlap and basically overwrite each other. So they always needs to have different names. So we'll rename that, and we will use our height to blend, to create really nice blend between layers. And we will do some auto sloping for the rocks as well, and same time with manual painting. So yeah, so this is basically what we've got. and I will see you in the next video. Have fun. I would like to say thank you to my all supporters. I appreciate your support. Thank you for your generosity. You can join our growing Discord community, where we like to discuss UEFN tips and tricks, showcase our work, and help each other. You can find link in the description or in the channel header. You can get project files on my Patreon or just buy me a coffee to support me. If you're interested in learning more about UEFN materials, coding, widget UI, and more, feel free to subscribe and click that bell icon to get notifications when new videos will be released. See you soon.